Good evening, everyone. This is Katina Taylor, Cecilia Belzer Patton, another edition of Policy Pulse Education
Policy
Edition.
polls.
So you know what I'm gonna do? Because I always start and I feel like our things are too small, like they can't see our faces. I need them to see us first. There we go. So welcome to another edition of Policy Pulse, the Education Edition, where we come to you to ensure that you are empowered, you are engaged, you are informed, and ready to take action. I am one of the hosts, Katina Taylor. I am a native Kansas Citian. I eat, sleep, and breathe education each and every day. I have been in the education ecosystem for 25 years, 15 of which I spent in the classroom, middle school, high school, elementary school, you name it. And so, welcome. This is where you can rest assured that we give you the relevant information in an objective way so you can determine how you choose to act moving forward as it relates to education policy. Cecilia, welcome to folks. Tell them who you are.
Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Happy first day of Royals season. All of those things. Everybody's out at the K, other than being here with us, which is where you should be. I am Cecilia Belzer Patton. I use the she, AI pronoun series, and I am the founder and cultural curator of Just Systems. I, too, am a veteran educator. I've had experience K through 12, as well as in higher education. And we are very committed to making sure that you, our audience, our community, our colleagues and friends have all the information that we need to make very viable decisions about how we want to go about the business and the love of education.
Awesome. So we explore really the leadership that is shaping what we will be tonight anyway. Exploring the leadership shaping the future of Kansas City Public Schools. We are speaking with one of the candidates who we will introduce soon. But before we do that, we want to ensure that each and every one of you are well informed around who we are. I think we just did that. We want to make sure that you all understand and know that the views and opinions expressed during this broadcast belong with the individual and do not reflect the views of any organization, business, or entity that we are affiliated with. We are voters just like you. We are community members just like you. And we are committed to ensuring that just like you, we have the relevant, most up-to-date information so that we know how to advocate, mobilize, organize, all of the things, right?
Be a community with one another around education. Yes.
All right. So what are we talking about tonight, Cecilia?
Woo, woo, woo. We have in 2 weeks an election coming up. You all. We know that we are voting on very important things on April 8th, Tuesday, April 8th, 2025. And one of those important things that we're voting on in Kansas City are the school board elections. And so for Kansas City public schools, and we wanted to give our candidates that are running for positions there the opportunity to share out about their vision for good scholarship, good community, good parent engagement, good policy development, good what's another word I can use, Katina?
Good hiring, retaining, and evaluating superintendents.
Absolutely. All the things that are the visionary skills as well as the boots on the ground, detail-oriented skills that good board of directors need. And so we reached out and we said, hey, y'all want to come on? Similarly to how we shared information about the bond that is up for our approval as well. And so we have our first guest tonight, Mr. Joseph R. Nelson. And we will have the rest of the candidates next week.
All right. Yes, there are 7 candidates, a couple of incumbents, and all the rest are new faces that are seeking a seat on the board. So it will be a very interesting election for sure. But before we do that, we wanted to make sure, first of all, that you all knew who the current board of directors are. And so this is a picture of them. You can go to kcpsboard.org and you can find out more about each of these individuals who have been serving and will continue to serve, right? Outside of two who are up for election. So if they are re-elected, of course, they will continue to serve. But we will see. I love the melanin. I love the color. I must say, in that picture,
it's very, very different than when we were there.
yes, for sure. And these are the current candidates that are seeking election. As I said before, you have Rita Cortez, Tanisha Nooner Ford, who are currently incumbents, meaning that they are currently serving on the board. They are seeking re-election. And we have 5 additional candidates who would be new if elected to the board. This is a photo from the Beacon. They did an amazing job covering the candidates and providing the information where you can go to their campaign pages, their social media outlets, etc., to find out more about each one of these candidates. So outside of Mr. Nelson, who will be with us this evening, all of the other candidates will be with us next Thursday. The last time you will have an opportunity to see perhaps or hear from them before you vote on what date again, Cecilia?
Tuesday, April 8th, 2025. You can start voting at, what is it, 6 in the morning, going to about 7 in the evening. No excuses, you all. We all can get there.
That's right. Make sure you go to the Kansas City Election Board website to ensure you know where to go vote. Make sure you're still registered and haven't been purged from those polls. All right. So again, this is our candidate series. And so we will be providing information for you to be informed and make your choice when you go to the polls. So we're talking voter education, information you need before you cast your ballot, right? We're going to be focused tonight on understanding the roles, responsibilities, and qualifications for school board. And we want to ensure, right, that you are able to make informed choices, right? So that's where we are. That's what we're doing at the end. So stay tuned to the end. We're going to actually highlight some amazing things, and not amazing in a good way sometimes, but there have been some moves in the policy space around education. We want to make sure we point those things out in the last 7 days that we were with you, so that you are informed about what's happening, why it's happening, and all those good things. So, Cecilia, why don't you tell the people what school board members actually do?
It would be my pleasure. I think oftentimes when people have public-facing ways in which they're either their job or in which they do community service, folks think, oh, it's just a she thing to do and that people are not engaged in hard work. We really wanted to dismantle that rumor because it is just that. Being on a board of directors of any kind or being a board official is in many ways like having a second job. It's a part-time job for some, and it's more akin to a full-time job for others. And so we really wanted to be able to share out the different things in which our Kansas City Public Schools board officials do. They adopt district policies. So they are the ones who help to craft, help to vision, help to then manifest and implement district policies. That's why it's so important to have a good board of directors, as well as it's important to have longevitous leadership at the district level. They also oversee the budget, right? They approve and monitor for all financial decisions. They are fiscally responsible, as all board members are. Katina and I are both in board service with different not-for-profit organizations, and it requires for us to be fiscally responsible for that organization. No matter what I can say, I didn't know, and I would still be held responsible for that. The board of directors for Kansas City Public Schools and all of board of directors for public schools and private schools, charter schools, however you want to think about these things, they hire the superintendent, right? They are responsible for selecting, evaluating, keeping, sustaining good leadership, district leadership. They also monitor those outcomes. So the promises that the district makes around their their district policies, their big rocks, as KCPS says, that they are wanting to move through, all of the things that have fallen under the 2030 plan with Kansas City Public Schools, they monitor those outcomes. And so they track the progress. They look at that from academic achievement as well as social, emotional achievement of students and their families, and with the equity goals that the district has in place currently.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. Good job.
And let me point this out for those of you that don't know. These are volunteers.
I was
they
going to say it's unpaid.
Not receive a salary for this work.
It's unpaid.
It is unpaid. So please understand and know that these are people that truly value education, we hope, that are working in the best interest of children, families, teachers, our community, we hope, right? And they are actually adding something onto their plate without compensation. And it takes an extensive amount of time for them to do this job and do it well, right? All right. So what are the priorities in terms of KCPS in 2024? I've looked at Blueprint 2030. I've been on that website. I've talked to other school board members. And from what I have learned, what I see, what I hope is that we are leaning into innovation, looking at new approaches to learning, or going back to the things that we know work for children and abandoning the things that we know do not work. We are looking for equal opportunities, equitable distribution of resources for all students. And we want to ensure that students are ready for skilled trades, entrepreneurship, college and university studies, whatever it is they want to do next. We want to ensure that they have real world readiness, right? So whatever future success as defined by them, for them, we want to give them the tools, the resources, the training, the support to be ready for that. Also,
so parents,
go ahead.
Can you, when we're talking about real world readiness, parents, caregivers, TTs, grandma, grandpas, everybody, community, it takes a village. Yes. Oftentimes you will hear the term 21st century learning, right? It is ensuring that we're doing, as Katina said, everything that we can do, that whatever a student and their family dreams for them, whether it's going into a skilled trade, whether it's going directly to work after high school, after their K-12 education, or whether it's going to a college or university, 21st century learning is what we hope that we do. That's what real world readiness is.
Absolutely.
So when you hear those are oftentimes interchangeable.
And they're sometimes people think of them as buzzwords, but when I think of 21st century learning, I think of critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, right? Being able to participate civically in a
solution oriented.
Yes, a real
all these different ways. Differently than even when we came through. I don't think that people were in many ways aware that we were being trained to be employees. 21st century learning is training people to do whatever they so choose, whether they are an employee, whether they're an employer as an entrepreneur or as a business owner, or whether they're an academic and moving in those ways. And so it's a very different skill set that we're asking our students to be able to have and understand than what we did to graduate from high school.
Unless we were disruptors and chose not to operate in that way.
I was. You were. Yes,
that's right. One of the things that happened this week is Dr. Collier, the current superintendent for Kansas City Public Schools, received a 3-year contract extension, which means she will be with the district for at least an additional 3 years. At that time, the school board's responsibility is to reevaluate her performance and then determine if she is then eligible to continue on in her seat as a superintendent. That also means that any plans and any implementation strategies that she has been working on, her cabinet members have been working on, then they have an opportunity to continue that work and see it through to fruition. So that's something that is really important when we think about organizational and institutional knowledge, right? Because oftentimes when leadership changes, then the agenda changes and we don't actually see plans carried out to fruition. So her challenges include improving literacy rates and educational outcomes for all children, overcoming resistance to innovation and change, and building trust and engagement with the community. While she has been around the district for about 25 years in various capacity, I think there is still room to continue to build the trust of the community, and we are seeing drastic budget changes.
Drastic. As
Yes.
everything, right? And so oftentimes when we say to ourselves, I've heard it, you all, many of you all know that some of the things that I do, and I share this when oftentimes when I introduce what Just Systems is I work at the intersection of politics and policy. And I hear often when people are talking about voting, when they're talking about it not being something that we need to do, that especially at the national level, what does it matter who's president? We're not a part of the electoral college, all the excuses that we have. One of the things that we are seeing, unfortunately, and hopefully fortunately, as we move forward in 2028, 2026 and 2028, we are seeing that, in fact, what happens at the national level does trickle down into our state and local ways in which we live. We are seeing all the things that Katina and I have talked about, shared about, really helped to put light on around a lot of these executive orders and ways in which these things are moving forward. It is affecting our local school districts, especially our public school ones.
Yeah, just today I heard from someone that it works for Kansas City Public Schools that their position may be cut due to some legislation and some decisions being made, not only at the federal level, but the state level, which now have trickled down to the local level regarding early childhood. And so that is something we'll talk about on the end, but we just wanted to make sure you all are aware that what happens at the top, it flows to the bottom eventually, right? Sometimes right now seems like more rapidly than in previous years. So what are some of the legal requirements for school board candidates? Well, you got to be 24 years old. You have to be a U.S. citizen. You have to be registered as a voter in the district in which you want to serve. You have to live within that district for at least a year. Now, here's some other stuff. No felony convictions. Cannot be a district employee. Whoo, I remember that one. And oftentimes you're required to get FBI fingerprint checks and things of that nature so that they ensure that you are prepared, equipped to serve, right? Now, there are also ethical standards for board members. You have to be of good moral character. Whatever that means.
Whatever that means.
Demonstrate integrity in all actions. Avoid conflicts, meaning that you are having arm's length or clean transactions. You cannot get personal gain from public service. You have to follow all laws at every level, and you should be student focused, making decisions based on first and foremost student welfare. That's my mantra. I always ask the question, is it good for children? If I answer that,
that's yes. An African proverb. Is it well with the children? Is it well with the children?
And if you can't answer that as a yes, don't do it. Don't do it.
And I would even say, Katina, oftentimes it's easier for people to grasp a hold of and say, oh, I love these babies. I love the kids. I love that, and are foul to their families. And I would say, is it good for the children? Because if it's good for the children, it needs to be good for the family as well.
Absolutely. Yes. And then Kansas City Public Schools has some specific expectations. Okay. So school board members should champion literacy, right? We know we are in a literacy crisis. Advance equity, right? In terms of workforce, in terms of curricula, in terms of discipline and attendance and all the things. ADA compliance, etc. Social and emotional as well. So equity should be present in all things that we do. Ensure transparency. Be sure that you're making decisions openly with community input. Oftentimes, elected officials forget that they were elected by the community to represent the community.
They work for us. They work for us.
Say it again, one more time.
They work for us.
Okay,
So the same way that they can hire and fire a superintendent, we can hire and fire their butts.
Okay. And then they should represent all, serving the entire district, not their personal interests. So why does this matter? Board members safeguard community confidence, right? Decisions directly affect classroom instruction and the teachers and children within those classrooms. And certainly, boards build vital partnerships beyond schools. They should be engaging with the civic community, the faith-based community, any stakeholder that is directly and or indirectly impacted by how well we do, quote unquote, education, right? Colleges and universities, etc. So that is why all of this matters. All right. So as we interview this candidate tonight and we hear him speak, I want you to scan this QR code. You guys hear me? Scan this QR code. And if you catch the replay, you can still scan it. It will be active. And I want you, based on what you hear from him, to rate whether or not you think he is a viable candidate for Kansas City Public Schools. What are some of the things we're looking at, Cecilia? Go down the list.
We're looking for a clarity of vision. So clear goals. And we're rating 1 to 5, 1 being your least ability to see that they have a clear vision. 5 being, oh yeah, they have a very, very clear vision. You know, I'm like that. I'm a visionary. Knowledge of current issues. So making sure that they're well informed, you all, making sure that they know about the Blueprint 2030 and that they're the superintendent contract and all of the literacy needs. And I would say if we're going to talk about literacy needs, we also need to talk about numeracy needs. So those are the things. Accountability and transparency, willingness to speak on difficult topics, even if it perhaps can make you unpopular, even if it's the hard thing to talk about, being willing to do so. And also being willing to do so with a solution orientation in mind, right? Wanting to help to solve the problem. Community engagement. We know oftentimes that our community members have our parents, our grandparents, and other caregivers, TT's uncles, have not always been welcomed as hospitably as they should be in our communities and in our schools. So they're looking for specific ways in which they can include families, caregivers, students, and all community stakeholders. An equity lens, right? Not an equality lens, because an equality lens is giving everybody the same thing. An equity lens is giving each and every student and their family what they need, as well as looking at the evidence of policies, inclusive policies for underserved, undervalued, and often invisible populations. Did y'all know that sometimes invisible man, Richard Wright, invisible populations, right? Leadership readiness, making sure for newer candidates that there are transferable skills and readiness to govern, right? So, you know, oftentimes we think, was that person been a leader? It doesn't take someone saying that you're in a leadership position for you to be able to lead. So oftentimes we encourage mothers, fathers who have never done this before to move through that because they have transferable skills in order to do so. And last but surely not least, a proven track record of being able to adequately and above adequately do all of the things that they have but put in place to do. For the incumbents that are running again, it's an evidence of the impact that they have had, a reflection of their current work, and a willingness to grow and to continue to grow so that they do what is best for our children and their families.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. You hit the nail on the head. So this is what we're looking at. This is how we are evaluating candidates, right? We believe that these are the most important things that candidates should have. They should be scoring high, 4s and 5s, 3 mediocre, 1s and 2s, they out the door. They are not equipped to serve yet.
Because guess what? Our students deserve it.
Yes. And so, yeah, we don't have time for people to learn on the job, so to speak, right? I love OJT. I think on the job training is great, but our children have a finite time to get the highest quality education education possible, and we need people that are ready for the job. Don't cut your teeth with us, right? No, thank you. So tonight, we have a candidate that is joining us. He has us all to himself tonight. The other 6 will be joining us next week. It was not orchestrated in any way. We just reached out. We told them what the options were, and they chose. So he gets us all to himself. He gets you all to himself. And so what we will be looking at is the vision for KCPS, his leadership background. We've heard some things around military conduct, his service in the Navy, community expectations, etc. So we want to welcome to the stage, to the screen, our candidate, Joseph Nelson. Here he is. Give him a hand. Woo, I need a podcast thing that can make sounds.
Boom, 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 boom. I was just trying to vibe with you, Mr. Nelson.
I'm fancy.
You didn't come in. You didn't get yes, you was coming. Okay.
I'm ready.
Well, welcome to Policy Pulse, the education edition.
We're glad to have you here.
Mr. Nelson, go ahead and introduce yourself to the people. Tell them who you are. We'll give you about 60 seconds to do that.
Ooh, that's a long time. Can I have some, I was taking notes while you all were talking, so I have some stuff I wanted to add to what you were saying. Is this going to cut into my 60 seconds?
No. We'll save that and bring it up as we go. But I want you just to give them that core introduction of who you are. I'm going to give you a solo layout. So people only see you. They're not seeing us. So you have the floor.
All right. So is this just introduction or
just introduction.
The platform?
Just introduction.
All right. Hey, everybody. Joe Nelson. I've been in Kansas City 5 years, originally from New York. Decided to move to Kansas City, and I was pretty much appalled that in my new city, my new home, there wasn't adequate heating and cooling in the schools. And so I started to pay attention, learned a lot about the tax levy, the desegregation case, talked to past board members, talked to lawyers, talked to teachers. And then I was actually in the schools working on both sides of the state line as an academic coach for a few years when I first got here. And so I see firsthand a lot of the gaps in terms of reading, math, and we have to take full responsibility for our entire community. And that's part and parcel with what I want to see happen. I remember everybody being involved, whether you had children in the district or not. And I'd like to see that here in Kansas City.
All right. Well, here we are. Right now, we are back with you. We wanted to give you an opportunity to be spotlighted. The people here for you, not distracted by us. This is what you sent me. I'm going to share it with the folks. You said, look, I'm running for Kansas City Public Schools Board of Education to build a community of shared investment in public education. That's more than a slogan. It's a call to action. Our schools don't just need support. They need all of us. Teachers, parents, students, neighbors, businesses. Everyone has a stake in where our public schools serve this city. Mm-hmm. Kansas City should be a national leader in public education. The world is changing fast. The nature of work is shifting, and the pace and methods of learning have evolved with it. We can't afford to let our students fall behind in outdated systems. We need schools that move with the times, classrooms that are innovative, inclusive, and rooted in real-world readiness. That means modern curriculum, interesting, make notes, Cecilia, strong teacher support, transparent leadership, and a system that puts student growth above politics. Note, put a star. Note. He says he brings a no excuses leadership style shaped by real service and real results. He has served as a forward deployed sailor in the U.S. Navy, where he led joint operational planning in high pressure environments. There's no room for shortcuts, only mission clarity, accountability, and execution. He has carried that discipline into the corporate world. He's worked at Goldman Sachs as a strategist, solving strategic problems that have required collaboration, precision, and resilience. He doesn't believe in vague promises or status quo thinking. He believes in systems that work for educators doing the hard work every day, for families who deserve to be heard, and for students whose futures depend on the choices we make today. Kansas City has everything it needs to lead, and we just have to choose it. So he's running to bring urgency,
Yes.
strategy, and shared purpose to that work. So welcome, welcome, welcome. That's what your bio said. I read it. I hope I did you well.
Hey, that I was like, man, this sounds good. Like, yeah.
Listen, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, I did say that. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yes.
So, Mr. Nelson, I'm going to start off with our first question. One, where in New York are you from?
So I was born in Manhattan, right across from the George Washington Bridge. I was actually born in my mother's.
Uptown.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
Uptown. So I was actually born in the ward where my mother worked for 30 plus years as a union nurse.
So I lived for over a decade in the New York City area. So I lived uptown for a while, and then I was in Brooklyn. I spent most of my time in Brooklyn, but really enjoyed my time there. So we have some questions that we prepared for you, and we want you to feel as free as you can to answer them. As Katina said, if there's some things that you had that you wanted to point out, trickle that with all the things that with the questions that we asked you. We want you to feel like that this is your time to be able to share out who you are to our audience. So our first question is that you've described your leadership style as no excuses and rooted in accountability. How do your past experiences, including your time in the military, shape that approach for you today?
Yeah, I think the best way to look at that is at the results, right? And so when you're in harm's way, and I'll use an example from an engineering perspective, right? So one of the roles I had, I was the second in command of the engineering department. So ships run like mini cities. And so we're in charge of making water, we're in charge of making our electricity, we're in charge of keeping the ship moving, providing all the heat and cooling and making sure the stuff in the kitchen works. Because if you can't work in the kitchen, all you're going to have is Pop-Tarts, and nobody wants fresh fish out in the ocean, right? So the scariest thing at sea is silence, right? And you would think, oh, what if there, bombs or gunfire, something else happening? No, because you're trained for that. You see that all the time. It's silence, because that means that everything's shut off, right? And so I've been in those situations where we're the Navy, right? Nobody's coming to rescue us. If there's a fire, we don't call the firefighters. We have to put that fire out, right? If there's a medical emergency, there are folks on board that have to take care of that emergency. So when we're out there and we have who we have with us, and we have our resources that we left with, and that's it. So the idea of, well, we'll have another meeting and we'll form another committee and we'll have another study to kind of get something done, that doesn't fly. So we figure out how to make things happen. And you want to do that in an ethical way, but you also want to make sure that, that it gets done, because in those terms, a lot of those decisions are life or death, right? And that's not to be morbid. It's not to be, it's not to exacerbate the nature of the work, but I think we're in a very much life or death situation, right? When you talk about the schools and the output that we're producing, when you talked about earlier, all the education cuts that are coming, right? What is our plan? And if we haven't started engaging the community on what our plan is, we're already behind the ball. And I have some more things I want to talk about, but that's really the answer to that question is I've lived it too many times to where we're given, hey, this is the mission, we have to get this done, and you figure it out, right? So you bring the people you need to bring together, and you don't stop until you figure it out. And so we're in a situation where we're losing funding, policies are changing, we're already in a teacher crisis, and we're asking the public for money for a bond that hasn't been passed since 1967. So there's a lot of things going on, and there's a lot of history here. We need to be communicative. We need to be transparent, but we also need a plan, right? Hope is not a plan. So I've heard about hope that we can do this on the next term, and we hope we can have a meeting, and we hope we can form a committee, and we hope we can do this, right? Hope is not a strategy.
Yeah.
Right. So
Absolutely.
we need solid plans, and we need to include the community in it, because Kansas City is so rich with resources, corporate resources, entrepreneurships. The faith community is strong here historically, right? And it's very vibrant right now, but we're not utilizing all of the tools we have at our disposal.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your answer to that question. The next question is, what personal or professional lessons have you learned from challenges you have faced in the past, and how do those lessons guide your decision making today?
I think one of the challenging things I had in leadership, especially as we look at things, a lot of the biases, and we look at the dismantling of DEI and the attack of a lot of our communities. We need to, again, have a strategy in place to respond, right? We need to mourn the loss of some of the funding and some of the gains that we've made over the years. But after we take a breath, we need to go into action, and we need to mobilize. And so the example I bring up, I had a young sailor that everybody under my command, all the leadership that was under me was saying, we got to get rid of her. She's no good. She's not fit for the Navy. She doesn't do the work. She doesn't, everything under the sun. They were like, we got to get rid of her. Right. And so I took a step back, and I said, well, bring her in to come see me. And we talked about, well, what's going on. And it turns out that the recruiter, she was in nursing school, and she left nursing school to join the military. And because the tuition was getting too high, and the military offered scholarships and a lot of medical programming. So she went to the recruiter and said, I want to be a nurse, right? Recruiter said, great, you have great test scores, all the great things. And then whatever they did with the paperwork, right? Because the medical community was already overfilled for that year. They made sure that she got in the military, but she didn't get the nursing pathway. So she's in the engine room turning wrenches when she wanted to be in the operating room with patients, right? And so everybody's like, well, you got to get rid of her, right? And I was like, well, here's what I'm hearing, and I hear what you're saying, but did you know that these programs exist, right? And I showed her about 3 or 4 programs where you can go from sailor to admiral, where you can transition from one role to another role, where you can do your time in service, and then you get a free scholarship to certain schools within the states, and can advance your career that way. And she was like, wow, I had no idea all this existed. I'm like, yep. So here's all the information. You can let me know if you need help with any of it. I know people that have done some of these programs. I'll connect you. But it was eye-opening for her. The next thing I said was, hey, you can't apply for any of these programs if you continue down the path of everybody telling you that you're the worst sailor. And like, they want me to kick you out. She was the number 1 sailor the next quarter. The number 1 sailor, right? So you have to dig. You can't look at something. You can't just take what other people's opinions are. You have to really dig and understand folks. And everybody has a different story. We all have different walks. And until you sit down and talk to somebody about it, you're not going to know, and you're not going to get to the root cause of the problem, right? And there's, a million stories like that in our communities, right? All over.
Sure. Thank you for that, Mr. Nelson.
Sure.
The next question is, many voters care deeply about transparency and character, especially in educational leadership. How do
Mhm.
you define integrity, and how have you worked to demonstrate that in your public and in your private life?
Yeah, I think having hard conversations is essential. And politics, um, even a lot of the things that are happening at the federal level, at the state level. And I've been to Jeff City several times, right, already this year. And when you look at politicians that are on opposite sides of the proverbial aisle that will sit in a room across from each other with completely opposing views, and the decorum and the level of respect and politeness is unmatched, right? Because they're there to get something done. Are there disagreements? Yes, all the time, right? But there are also hard conversations, and you can't bypass those in any sense, right? And so a lot of folks are uncomfortable with difficult conversations. Uh, you got to get used to it, because when we're talking about a lot of the issues, especially the issues that are in our schools, a lot of parents are concerned, and they should be, parents and caregivers, right? Because it's not always the biological parents. We need to be more transparent, and it's not just the parents and caregivers, it's the entire community, because the output that we provide from the schools goes into the community. They're our future leaders, right? So when we look at who's working at the city, who's working in the companies that are coming to Kansas City to set up headquarters, who's going to take on these roles, we want to prepare citizens for society, and that education starts in the schools.
So I want to stop you, because one of the questions were, and I think you're kind of scooting around the question, is
No, go
how
ahead.
do you define integrity? So having hard conversations, yes,
Yeah.
but what are the ways in which you define integrity?
So the lead into that is 100% honesty and transparency. So, even when we had an incident on board one of the ships where the chemistry was out of whack, right? And so those things have to be reported off ship. And there are a lot of people, well, don't report it. We don't need to report it. It won't be a big deal. And no, we have to report it, right? And what I did was make sure that that report went out, and it resulted in, we had to change our schedule. We had to go in for an evaluation. People were upset. They're like, we can't, you can't do that. But I'm like, hey, this is the role, this is the responsibility that I took on, right? And I read the manuals, I read the book. I said, hey, we were out of line, we were out of compliance. We have to report this to higher headquarters. We reported it. And what we end up finding during that inspection probably saved lives. Not even probably, it definitely saved lives, because we already had several casualties in the engine room that could have killed a few sailors. And so by making that report, we were able to get the necessary repairs, get the necessary funding, which was part of the issue of why a lot of the equipment wasn't up to the standard that it was supposed to be at. But it turned out that a lot of folks knew about some of these issues, because it wasn't the first time that it had happened. It was the first time it happened since I'd been there. But because they hadn't reported it, there was all of these things that were out of whack. So 100% transparency, 100% honesty. And, even when it sucks, you have to, stand up and walk right into whatever you're going to face, right? Head high, and take on that challenge.
I'm glad you mentioned total honesty, transparency, difficult conversations, because it may get a little uncomfortable tonight with us. Some information has surfaced from your time in the military that raises questions for some voters about past conduct.
Mm-hmm.
And my question to you is, are you willing to speak to that chapter of your life?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Because I want to ask permission. I don't want to, just jump right in.
Mm-hmm.
So what has surfaced is some information regarding your time in the military. The information that we have is that you were dishonorably discharged, that you cohabitated with sex workers, that you were AWOL for a short period of time, and when taken into custody, was not honest about your status with the Navy at that time. It's has been said, or I've read court records that say you were convicted, that you appealed the convictions, and the convictions were upheld, barring a couple of little deals in terms of statements that were made. But overall, the convictions were upheld. So voters hearing about this for the first time may have some concerns about moral, turpitude, so to speak, your character, your honesty. Is this a pattern of behavior? Those types of things. So I definitely don't want to be held hostage to my past. People change, they grow, they evolve, but we want to have an opportunity to just have a real clear conversation about that period in your life. What can you share with us?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to address this because it would be disingenuous to make the statements I made earlier and then not walk the talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had reserve orders to Bahrain. I was supposed to be there for a few weeks.
And for people that don't know, that is in the Middle East, right?
That is in the middle. So that's in the sandbox. I was there for a few weeks. I was asked to stay on longer, which entitled me to, housing and a few other things, right? And so I was working. I had my own command. I still had my own businesses, and I was working as a department head within that command. And then I was taking on another role to take on an additional watch station, right? So that was voluntary. So I was pulling probably 18-hour days at a minimum, right? Over there's not a lot of food options. And so I got tired of eating Taco Bell, especially when it cost me $20 a meal. So I hired someone locally to cook my meals and take care of the house that I had. Fast forward, a lot of foreign nationals that are in overseas, and there's a big mix of folks. They're very close. And so someone had said, hey, I need help. And I helped them find a job with someone on base that I knew as a nanny. Turns out that person had been forced into some unfortunate situations. And so that person took them to NCIS. NCIS launched an investigation against the folks the sailors that were being accused of abusing this person, and the agents had said, "Hey, how did you escape from this situation?" And the answer that she provided was, "Well, Joe helped me, right? Joe helps everybody." And so that's how I was brought into that situation. So when they looked at it and they were like, "Well, are there women in your house?" I was like, "Yeah, my housekeeper," right? And so they asked me to testify. They were like, "Well, you're a credible witness. We can really put these guys away." And I said, "Well, I don't know how I can do that. I don't actually know them," right? And so it quickly shifted and it became, "Well, we think you're in charge of this now because now you're not willing to work with us." And so I said, "Well, okay, like that's not the case. I'm willing to cooperate." And it went from there. So the justice system prevailed. Most of that went away before it even went to court. I was asked several times to sign different deals so I could go home, and I refused because I wasn't guilty of anything. And then eventually the process played out, and I don't have anything on my record to show from that time.
You said you don't have anything on your record?
Nothing on my record to show. And I'm pretty sure I know which article you're referring to, but that article was very early in the process. And I don't have a dishonorable discharge. I only have an honorable discharge. I'm with the VA. I'm rated with the VA. And again, I passed background checks on both sides of the state line.
Yeah. So we weren't I'm referencing an article. We are actually referencing court proceedings.
Okay.
Just FYI, full
Yeah.
transparency. I'm a Juris Doctorate. I worked with some others to kind of figure out, like, hey, one, I wanted to identify, is this the right person? You know, it could be another Joseph Nelson. So that was the one thing. So we actually went in and actually looked at the court documents.
Sure.
And so the court documents from the appellate court say that they upheld a dishonorable discharge. That is what is there.
There's more than one appeal.
Yes, there were two.
Yep. And so when you look at the final results,
I did.
all of that is gone.
It's not.
What's still there? You're talking about the unauthorized absence, which is a tardy, and a conduct unbecoming, which is a catch-all. It's, hey, we messed up, but we got to give you something to say that to basically administratively get rid of you.
And then the financial obligation as well, correct?
Yeah, I mean that's a trick because I was on reserve orders. So if I'm not on active duty, I'm not receiving active duty pay. So I can't be docked pay if I'm not being paid. You see what I mean?
I guess one of the questions I have, and one of the things that Katina and I very intentionally have done in this space, Mr. Nelson, is that we want to be objective and we want to provide space for information and knowledge to be had. And so I wonder, since you know that these things are out there, that they can be around, thank you for having the willingness to be transparent with us and to be open and honest with us and our audience. The question I have is that with the world that we live in, and where you can Google a person's name and you can know everything about them, even when you ask Google to take it down, oftentimes they don't. I wonder why you did not lead with this information and then move from there. Because people are going to find it out. That's what happens in politics, even at school board levels of politics. So, and that I wonder that. I appreciate Katina using the term sex worker, because I do believe that sex can be work. I think we have a very antiquated way in which we look at women and calling them prostitutes and things of that nature. And I also want to give space for how you have helped us to understand the difference in how people live in other places and what people are forced to do in order to take care of themselves, which can oftentimes be deemed as prostitution when it is work in order to take care of themselves and their families. So my question is really, why do you not lead with this information, knowing that it may come up and impede your quest to be on the KCPS school board?
Well, the reason I wouldn't lead with this is because the allegations were not proven to be substantial, right? And then anything that even made it to court was downgraded or overturned. So again, the justice system did what it was supposed to do. I cooperated the entire time. I was very transparent with them. And, you know, in the end, I don't have anything. Again, like so I understand the court documents are not going to go away, right? The articles, some of them, most of them are still up or floating around. But the ultimate result is that I don't have anything that translates to civilian life, and I'm still pursuing the administrative review in order to basically clear my record on the military side so that if I choose to, I can continue to serve, right? Or not even serve, so I can continue to advance, right? And so it's not something I would lead with because it really hasn't been a factor in anything that has been a part of my life or the work that I've done before then, after then, during that time. While that was being investigated, I had a scholarship and I was working on a master's in secondary education, right? Like there's nothing about this that I don't want. I want people to feel comfortable with being able to say, hey, I heard this, and I'll be like, hey, what would you like to know? Right? Because the other part of it is, and it was very telling about that whole process, the way that it all happened, right? I support law enforcement, and I want them to. They need more resources than they're given, but the legal system is pretty wild, and so there are students that we have, and people in our community that have faced challenges where they were either involved in things that, or they were looped into processes or programs or situations that weren't accurate in what they were actually doing. Like if you were in the car and somebody had a warrant, right? So now everybody in the car is guilty of XYZ offense, right? And so there's too many situations like that where folks are not given the opportunity to really represent themselves. So I do give the military credit for, doing the digging, doing the research, and it ultimately nothing. So,
Thank you.
it was a challenging time. But I made it through, and I feel like it gave me a perspective that I can understand and now relate to a lot of folks who have been in the system. There's a lot, actually. One of the things I wanted to talk about was the expungement process and the restoration of rights, right? So if you're off paper, you get to vote, and nobody's telling people this.
Mm-hmm. One of the things, hold on one second. Oh, go ahead, Cecilia. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Oh, well, one of the things you talked about also was diversity, equity, inclusion. The fact that DEI is under attack, and that, of course, then to Cecilia's statement earlier, directly impacts people of color, marginalized communities and populations, and sometimes invisible. And so while I know that Kansas City Public School Board is a nonpartisan race, it seems as if, and I know you've been supported by conservative allies, so to speak, the Republican Party. Do you identify as a Republican? And if so, how is it sounded as if when you made the statement about DEI that you supported it. How does that then bear out within a party that currently is attacking DEI at every level?
Sure. So I'm actually a registered independent. And then as far as the DEI piece of things go, I think that equity is something that is across the board. And you talked about it earlier, right? That needs to be handled. Not even handled. It should be part of all of our processes from the beginning, right? And if you actually look, and I'm sure you have, right? When you look at the documents for the school board, right? 0.0 is equity. Everything that we're doing is about equity, right? In the process, education, so all the process, discipline, food, education, curriculum, it's all about equity. So I'm 100% in support of that, because if we're not empowering all of our students, right, to have that optionality that we were talking about, to be able to go into the trades, to be able to go to college, to be able to go into business for themselves, right, then we're not doing them a service by forcing them to be in a classroom every single day of the week. So I want to get back to, can we go back to the question?
Which you answered it.
Okay.
So
Sorry, I got
we're there.
but
One of the things
did
we
I
really
answer the
try to
question?
do. Yep, you did answer it.
Okay. Yeah.
One of the things that we really attempt to do at this time is keep it right. We want to be fair with you, as we want to be fair with our folks who are running next week as well.
Yeah.
And we try to keep ourselves right at an hour.
Okay.
So, and we are at the hour, top of the hour. I know that there are some things that you had said that you wanted to bring into question. So we want to give you time to do that. And we also want to give you time to close out, as you opened up, to close out of why people should vote for you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I remember the other thought I had. So you had mentioned some conservative support. And the thing about an at-large seat is that I don't get to choose sides, right? I choose solutions. And not that I would want to choose sides, I choose solutions over all of that, right?
Definitely a nonpartisan seat.
Right,
Absolutely.
and it's a nonpartisan seat, right? So and that's a military thing, right? The commander in chief is the commander in chief. Period. It doesn't matter what party they're coming from, right? So my goal in running for this race was to talk to everyone, and I'm doing that. I'm going to as many meetings and as many community events as I can, like I always do, and I'm talking to everyone and I'm listening to everyone, right? And so if folks are supporting me, it's because I'm listening to what their concerns are and I'm going to represent those for everyone. And that's it, period. So my notes from earlier, and then I'll do my closeout. So you had said that it was 2 weeks to election day. It's 12 days.
It is 12 days.
It's 12 days. And
yes.
we talked about
military mind, detail orientation.
Not that anyone's counting. I'm definitely counting, but 12 days. Early voting is open. It opened on Tuesday. And so we have 3 satellite sites. So you don't even have to wait until the 8th. Voting is open. What else did we talk? Oh, we talked about Jefferson City. You talked about, and I love the platform, and I wish that I'm going to keep sending you information because I've been up there probably 3 or 4 times already this year. The 2 times, once with the district, another time for a different event, and once impromptu because there were bills that were being heard that were affecting the tax basis that goes into the funding for the schools, right? And so that's another topic. Maybe we could talk about that another time, but we have to think of innovative ways to fund our schools and not rely on federal and state dollars because they're not dependable at this point. And regardless of whether they come back or not, we need other ways to fund what's going on because part of the issue with a lot of what's happening is even with the bond, there's a lot of issues across the community where Jackson County raised a lot of property taxes for folks in not so transparent ways. And there's several lawsuits, including a big one, right, that are pending. So if and when those funds have to be recouped or returned, right, we have to be responsible with those funds, right? But we also shouldn't be relying on that because we know that's a perpetuation of past inequities, right? So we have to get innovative, we have to get creative, and we have to figure out ways to fund our schools. And that conversation should have started long before the DOE got cut in half a few weeks ago, right? So Jefferson City, April 2nd, Child Advocacy Day, April 7th, Youth Advocacy Day. So I'll be up in Jeff City on both of those days. Anybody's welcome to join us. And don't let anybody say, well, I'm not registered. There's nobody that can tell you can't go to your state capital.
When you say us, who are you going with?
So I'm going with myself and my team. But there's organizers that have organized the day. So I've also registered with them. So if the registration is closed, that just means you won't get a t-shirt, right? It doesn't mean you can't go. No one can tell you can't go to your state capital.
Absolutely. Right? What organizations have you registered with?
So the one on the 2nd is with several organizations, including Empower Missouri. And I sit on a couple of committees with them. But they're one of the sponsors, or they're one of the groups, but it's a conglomerate of several organizations.
I know Empower Missouri. So it started out, Katina, as a social worker professional organization that has now expanded into an umbrella of community advocates that come from the social work or social sciences background, and they work statewide. I want to say this because I do have to hop off. I have a work responsibility where I have a Zoom at 7, you all, so I do have to get off. Mr. Nelson, thank you so much for coming forward and really sharing about yourself and your candidacy. We appreciate you. Please do what you said that you're going to do is reach out to us. Let us know other things that we might need to know or that you would like for us to know about your vision. And I think one of the things that I appreciate that you have shared is that even if you're not elected, it sounds like that you will continue to be try to be impactful in our community when it comes to children and their families. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. I have been, and I will continue to be. I think I can be more effective in the seat. But yeah, I'm going to continue to do everything I can to make sure that the city is producing and providing for our children.
All right. Well, we will also want to thank you all and point out that the Beacon did a great job outlining who the candidates are. So feel free to go to that website, check out all the information on the candidates, come back to our channel, make sure that you review these interviews that we're doing today and then next Thursday as well. Drop your questions, your comments, your concerns in the comment section. Even if you're catching the replay, we will do our very best to either reach out to candidates to have them answer the questions, and or we will address those questions ourselves. As we always say, get active, stay active, be informed, and be sure to get out to vote on April 8th. Thank you again, Mr. Nelson, for being with us. We really appreciate it. And feel free to stay in touch, and you are more than welcome to come back on at any time.
Awesome. All
right.
I enjoyed this. This was great.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you again for coming.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.